Finally, the third category of law was the social part. Like our own civil laws, these set the boundaries on how people were to interact with one another and resolve their disputes, and they generally existed to create an orderly, stable and harmonious society. If the ceremonial part of the law was designed to keep people right with God, then the social part of the law was designed to keep people right with each other. The social part of the law also involved instructions on neutral things. For example, the soil of the ground is a neutral thing, but in the law of Moses, there were rules on how to treat the land. Specifically, it said that farmland should be rested every 7th year so that it would remain productive with food. It also spoke about debts, saying that they should be reset every 7th year as well. And this is actually where the slavery controversy comes in with the Old Testament. There was indeed slavery in Israel in those days, but not as we think of it today. It operated a bit like this. In the days before industrial dishwashers, when you went to eat at a restaurant but found that you couldn't pay the bill, you could sometimes spend the evening washing dishes out back in the kitchen for free to pay off your debt. And it was a bit like that in Israel. People who couldn't pay their bills could do unpaid work to pay off their debts. It should also be noted that all slaves were to be treated with dignity too, basically just like staff. The law of Moses says, if one of your fellow Israelites falls into poverty and is forced to sell himself to you, do not treat him as a slave. Treat him instead as a hired worker or as a temporary resident who lives with you. They were to almost just be seen as a house guest. And as Paul later wrote, masters, treat your slaves with deep respect, don't threaten them. Remember, you both have the same master in heaven, and he has no favourites. In God's eyes, all men are created equal. This was just a debt-settling device. Furthermore, the law of Moses commanded that all slaves were released back into freedom within 7 years. There was also something called the Year of Jubilee, which has similar connotations, and this took place every 49 years. So whatever kind of mess people had made of their lives, whatever kind of debts they'd accumulated in that time, they were given regular opportunities to refresh and start over again in freedom. And if anyone would still like to argue with the Bible's overall teaching or record on this issue, it should be remembered that Christianity is the reason the slave trade was abolished at all. It was carried out by Christians acting specifically on the Bible's teaching. Now, you may be able to see how each part of the Mosaic Law interacted with the other parts. The moral part was designed to reveal how morally bankrupt the people were in the eyes of God. And then the idea was that that would then drive them towards the ceremonial part with its rituals to atone for their sin. The shedding of blood would be a potent reminder of the severity of their wrongdoing before a holy God. And then the social part of the law would keep people right with one another and would maintain a stable and harmonious society. The law had 3 categories, but it all functioned as one single unit.